So at this point, we've already cut together the rough version of our fight scene. We have the picture laid into the timeline in a way that gives us a good idea of the timing and pacing of the scene. In the next few lessons, we're going to rough in some of the main sound elements of the fight scene. This will include key sound effects, like punches, kicks, as well as a basic music bed to provide a bit of atmosphere. I'd like to take a moment to just mention a couple things about the sound editing process and how it fits into the whole process of editing together an action scene. For editors like us, who are editing both the picture and the audio ourselves, I believe that sound editing is very much a back and forth process. Typically, I like to start by roughing in picture, like we've already done. Then, I'll go ahead and rough in my key sound moments and music. We'll want to adjust the picture slightly during this stage to flow nicely with the audio rhythms that start taking shape. Once the picture and sound have both been edited rough into our timeline, then I'll go back through and start refining picture. We'll get to that later in the course, but it will include things like simulating camera shake, adding motion effects, and generally just tweaking and fine-tuning the visuals of our fight. And then finally, after picture has been refined, and the pacing and the rhythm of the whole scene are essentially locked, that's when it makes sense to go back through your cut and really sweeten your audio mix by adding supplementary sound design and detailed Foley effects. During the next 3 lessons that follow, we'll be focusing on the basic or rough sound editing part of the editorial process. Coming up, we'll start by adding some of the key sound effects to our fight to begin giving the punches, kicks, and blocks a bit more impact. Alright, see you in a bit. In this lesson, we'll be adding the key sound effects to our fight in order to start creating the general audio bed. So, what are the key sound effects that we'll be adding? Well, I'm referring to hits, like kicks and punches, grabs, blocks, and breaks, both with bones and glass. Before we start, I'd like to share a useful tip that you can use while working with your sound effects and music. Many people like to use waveforms to line up audio, but waveforms can sometimes slow down your computer. If you're having trouble with this, try turning off your waveforms. Then, instead, add markers or locators to your audio clips to mark key moments, such as the exact impact point of a punch, the peak of a rise, or the beats of a music cue. By using markers and editing with your waveforms off, you'll increase the responsiveness of the timeline. This becomes especially important when your sequence gets longer and more complex. Another benefit of using markers or locators to mark your accent points in your audio clips is that it will increase the accuracy of your edits. So if you're trying to time your shots to a music cue, or trying to make sure that your sound effects are perfectly lined up to their corresponding visuals, you'll always be able to easily see exactly what's lined up and what isn't, if there's locators and markers on it. Most programs will save the marker on the clip, so that the next time you go to use it for another scene or a different project altogether, you'll already have your audio beats and accents marked and ready to go. So for each clip that you work with, you really only ever have to do this process once. Alright, so as always, first things first, let's go ahead and duplicate our sequence. We'll go up to version 7, and I'm going to add the phrase key SFX to the end of the sequence. And we'll load it up. Alright, and I'm going to create a couple extra audio tracks. I'm going to create, these are mono tracks that we're working with right here, so I'm going to go ahead and create 6 more so that we have room for 3 stereo pairs of sound effects if we potentially use that many that we need to layer on top of each other. I doubt that we will, but we can always condense them later if we find that we have too many tracks. So there's 6 more tracks for a total of 10 currently. Another thing I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to start labeling our tracks, because now that we're going to have more than just the production audio, things might start getting a little bit messy and confusing, and this will also set us up nicely later on, if you were in a professional production environment, to be able to export stems for your audio mixer, or even just for a final output, if you're the one that's going to be handling that. So for the first 4 tracks here, I'm just going to label them dialogue. But I'm going to add a number in front of each track just so that we can easily be dropping things down from our audio tool and audio mixer and patch for patching reasons, so we know what the number of the track is. So I'm going to call it 1 space dia, and I'm just going to copy that. And then we'll do the same. Actually, I don't know why I copied it. It's not going to really help. Kind of manual here. 3, 4 dia. And then here, I'm just going to label these 5 key SFX, 6 key SFX, 7 key SFX, and so on. Actually, I guess I can go ahead and copy that part of it. And number 10. All right, great. So let's just go ahead and start by opening up some of our sound effect bins. Now all the fight sound effects that we're going to be working with, like punches, kicks, blocks, grabs, and all that, even the more subtle things that we're not going to be working with quite yet, like feet scuffling and body falls and things like that, and grunts, all of that stuff is in this Foley bin right here. And some of it's Foley, some of it's more like a sound effect, but it just was a nice way to categorize it since we have a couple other bins going on at the same time. So open up your Foley bin. And we already looked at this before, but just to familiarize yourself again for a quick refresh, you can see we have tons of blocks, body falls, you got cloth grabs, coughing, slaps, tons and tons of punches, all different types. And I tried to label them in a way that made some sense. So for example, a punch face light is going to have a little bit more skin contact versus a punch face. And a punch juicy is going to obviously sound like it's impacting some, I guess you could say, juicy flesh. But here's the difference. So here's a punch face light versus a regular punch face. And then the juicy. So you can see the juicy has a bit more of a wet feel to it, perhaps, a bit more of a slap. We also have some punches tied with whooshes. Got a bunch of stuff in here we can work with. So let's get started by looking for the first place where we're going to need a key sound effect. So I'm just going to start playing through the cut, and then as we arrive at locations where we're going to be adding sound, I'll stop, and then I'll kind of walk you through the process of adding the sound effects.
You got our money now, just leave us alone.
Get in the fucking warehouse, motherfucker. Now. Wait.
Okay, so here's the first time that we really need a sound effect. When Dan grabs Rollins' wrist. So it might be a little confusing when you encounter situations like this, like a wrist grab or something, because you know you need a sound effect, but it doesn't really fit into a category that we're used to looking up. So for example, we don't have, 15 sound effects that say wrist grabs. So we have to really kind of start to think about what a wrist grab might sound like. And in our case, it involves a lot of cloth movement, and it involves maybe kind of a thud. So something more akin to a block as well. So what we're going to do, we'll start by adding a block sound effect, and then I'm going to go ahead and we're going to add a couple cloth grabs. And the combination of those two types of things will give it a nice kind of sharp feeling of a quick, decisive block from Dan. And you know what? Blocks and body hits are all pretty similar, actually, because they all are kind of thuddy and dull sounding. So, for example, here's the sound of a block. And you can probably already imagine the body hit's going to be pretty similar. So actually, I'm going to grab a body hit. And let's see what we got here. Kind of like that one. So I'm going to grab body hit number 50. What is this, 51? Oh, actually 52, because I like the whoosh that's tied to number 52. Hear that? So that'll be kind of nice to accent his quick move. So I'm going to turn on my waveforms. I like to actually work with them on, and it's usually pretty quick in Avid here. So, all right, so I'm going to take my body hit. I'm I'm going to drop it down here. I'll mark up the, I'll add a locator to the peak of the sound effect also. So we can see it should probably occur right there at the point of contact. So you'll just bring it back. And let's see how this sounds.
Wait.
It's a good start. Maybe a bit much actually on the volume, but of course we'll do some more kind of fine tuning of the mix later on, but I'll lower it a little bit for now anyway. All right, and now let's add a couple of cloth grabs. So here's what the cloth grabs sound like. So I like this one. It has a bit of a snap to it, which is kind of what I'm envisioning this might sound like. So we're going to layer that cloth grab number 5 in with our body hit. Let's see how it sounds, just dropped right on top of it. It's pretty good. Let me check these other cloth grabs and make sure that we're using the one that works the best. I like the first part of this one, number 10. Let's go ahead and drop that in there too. We'll have 3 things layered on top of each other. Let's see. So that sounds pretty good. The sound of the cloth gives it a good feeling of quick movement because they all have jackets on and long sleeves, so you would be hearing stuff like that. And then the thud from the body hit really shows that there's some force behind this grab.
Wait.
Cool. All right, and actually, you know what? I'm going to, just because this is going to bother me, you can see that my track coloration is different for this one. So I'm going to try to keep all of my tracks, my dialogue tracks one color, my key sound effect tracks another color. So I'll just go ahead and make all my key sound effect tracks this green color, whatever this is. Put this down here because we don't need it. All right, let's keep going. So obviously, actually, the second thing that we need to sound design right here is directly after it. So after the grab, Dan then goes and pushes Rollins away on the chest. So we're going to want to hear some sort of sound effect associated with that so that it becomes a kind of a 1-2 move, a combo move here that Dan executes, a grab and a push.
Wait.
You can hear a little bit of it tied to the production audio, but certainly nothing that interesting. So we should definitely add our own. Actually, I wonder if we just use this grab here. Because that sounds like almost a cloth. Kind of a flat cloth slap.
Wait.
And you can see in some of this production audio, we're actually kind of hearing their lavalier mics being impacted by the hands, which we may want to completely get rid of later, or once we add the music and stuff, it might not bother us anymore, but I can certainly hear it right now. Kind of a lot of scuffling sounding. All right, let's try this out.
Wait.
Yeah, that's not bad. Works pretty good.
Wait.
And just, you know, kind of like when we were roughing in the visuals earlier on with the blocking in lesson, this is a little bit similar to that in the audio arena. So we're kind of just starting to rough in our audio beats. And I mean, you know, now that we have the visuals down, it's not going to be that rough because we basically know where stuff needs to go. But as far as fine tuning things and of course sweetening stuff, we're going to be dealing with a lot more of that later. So just getting kind of the rough key sound effects is really what the objective is here. Not to get it totally perfect quite yet. All right, now obviously this is definitely begging for a sound effect. So this is our first real punch of the fight. And this is where Rollins sucker punches Dan. So we're going to want to find a nice big punch to go ahead and kick the fight off. So it's a face punch, so we're going to definitely want to have some sort of a element of a slapping sound to it, as opposed to maybe a body hit, which would have been a bit more thuddy. So let's take a look. Let's see. Let's just take a look at some of our regular punches. I'll just start with punch number 1. That's a little cheesy. Punch 3 is... I don't know when I would ever use that. It'd be a cartoon. All right, so obviously there's a ton, and I'm not going to make you or myself listen to all of these. But feel free to go through them all if you want to keep kind of searching for what you think works best in each situation. But I'm pretty happy actually with that very first one. And maybe we can sweeten it a bit more with a face slap or something. But let's drop this in for now and see how this sounds with our punch. Because we are going for realism here, not overly stylized sound design. So we don't want to make the hits too over the top. That's actually really realistic. I mean, that sounds pretty good. We might spice it up a little bit, but that sounds pretty good. Right, what else do we have? Let's see if we can layer something else on top of that. Let's see what these punch faces give us. That's a good one. Bit much. Nope. Let's try number 11. It might be a little cheesy, but let's see. Let's see if we turn it down. I'm going to drop the volume on this this new punch face 11, and lower that a little bit. Let's see how this goes. Yeah, it kind of works. Punch face 1 sounded good too. Let's try that one instead. You can see that this is just kind of a process where you got to play with it a little bit. And once you get to know your sound effects, better, you'll kind of have ones that you naturally gravitate towards, and it won't be as much of a kind of a hunt and peck process. I think I like that better. It's a nice crisp sound, a sharp attack. It works well with this hit. Cool. Let's leave it like that. I'm going to get rid of punch face 11 here. So we ended up using punch number 1 and punch face 1. All right. Let's keep going. All right. So there's 2 more things here that need to be sound designed. Dan does some sort of hit to Rollins. It's kind of hard to tell what he's doing, but it's definitely to the body, not to the face. So we'll want some sort of body hit or thud or cloth grab or something going on. And then after that, Dan punches Rollins right in the face. So we'll want another punch sound effect similar to the one that we just used for Rollins hitting Dan. So let's start by grabbing a body hit. And let's try body hit 24. Yep, that sounds good to me. Let's drop it in. This is going to be for when Dan pushes or punches Rollins' chest or whatever he's doing here. It's kind of hard to tell when the impact occurs, so we're just going to lay it in for now, and then we'll just play it and we'll see how it feels before we actually add anything. Unless this production audio is accurate. No, that's his grunt that we're seeing there in the waveform, so the hit occurs probably before that. Yeah, that's fine. So slightly before this grunt, you'd have a hit. Nice thud going to the body from Dan hitting Rollins. And then we need a face punch. Now it's kind of like a rabbit punch here, a quick jab. So, and it's also to the face. So I'm thinking that it might be kind of a really crisp sounding light punch. So I'm going to check out some of those, the punch face lights. Oh, you hear this one? Punch Face Light 5. It has a bit of a swoosh at the beginning of it, which sounds nice. Of course, we're going to add our own swooshes later as we sweeten everything with sound design and more Foley. But since it's already part of this sound effect and the sound effect itself of the impact sounds good, it's not a bad way to go ahead and start. So let's drop in Punch Face Light 5 for Dan's rabbit punch to Rollins' face and see how that sounds. All right, let's check it out. Definitely realistic. And like we talked about earlier, I mean, you can really tell that we're not going for over-the-top style here. We're going for a gritty, raw, realistic fight in a back alley that's actually happening. And real punches don't really sound that interesting. So this is pretty perfect. It's probably a bit more accurate or a bit more stylized than a real punch would be. And, because this is a movie and we do want to be able to sell these moments. But it is important to make sure that you're not going overboard. That being said, I am going to see if there's anything else we can add to it that spices it up a little bit without pushing it too far. Like, that would be too far. Let's see. Let's check out these crunchy punches. Those are all a bit much. I'm going to take this one, Punch 23, and I'm going to layer it with this Punch Face Light that we already have. This one is a bit more heavy duty, this new one, Punch 23. And for that reason, I'm going to turn it down pretty far, but it will provide a bit of substance to this hit that I think that we're currently lacking from that. So I'm going to drop it in, I'm going to turn it down, and then layer it on top of what we already have. I went down 9 dB, but that's just a ballpark. So let's see how much of a difference this is making. I'm just going to go ahead and mute this new punch that we just added and play it without it, just with the original light punch. And then we'll play it with the new punch added on top. So it's not too much different, but it's definitely got a little bit more impact. I'm actually going to turn it up a little bit more. That's good. Cool. All right. And let's just go ahead and play what we have here so far.
Wait. Hey, oh.
Good. Yeah, it's looking good. All right, so let's just go ahead and we'll move on to where TT kicks Dan in the stomach here. All right. So while we're here, I think I actually might adjust the picture here a little bit too, because the follow through from this shot to the next shot isn't quite lining up. So I'm actually just going to trim it a little bit. That's a little bit smoother. Great. All right. So obviously a kick to the stomach is going to be a pretty thuddy, deep body hit coupled with a little bit of cloth sound because he is impacting his shirt and his jacket and whatnot. So let's start by adding a body hit. Let's see. There's a real lot of them, so I'm just going to kind of blindly pick a few and see if we can stumble upon one that works for us. I'm going to use body hit number 7. Drop it right about there. Feels a little bit late, maybe. All right, and now let's go ahead and layer on a cloth sound. So I'm actually going to look at the, we have a couple punches here that are pre-layered with cloth sounds, and I call them punch clothing. So I'm actually going to sift for those, since I can't find them. All right. These might actually be pretty good, because they're going to have a little bit of a snap and a punch and a kick thud sound effect, along with the clothing itself, so I think it might be a nice thing to layer on top. That's nice. That's a good thud. All right, let's drop that in here. Layer it on. All right. Now, the issue I'm having with a couple of these things here and there are that these hits are always feeling a little bit late to me, and they're not late. I mean, that's where the impact's occurring, and it looks pretty accurate. But what we're missing is basically the grunts and the effort groans and whatnot from the people doing the hitting, and then from the people getting hit afterwards. But primarily, I'm focused right now on the things leading up to the hits, and that's why I think it feels empty and it feels late to me. But all those groans and effort things and whatnot, we're going to be adding later on in the course. But I just wanted to point out that if you also feel like there's kind of a little bit of empty space or an audio hole occurring before these hits and punches and whatnot, that might be also what you're feeling. That being said, I'm going to roll it back 1 frame. All right, let's keep going. So the next thing we need to sound design is TT punching Dan in the face. Let's check out these punches with whooshes, because it's a nice kind of arcing motion. So we might want a bit of a whoosh sound to go with it. Let's see what we got. It's actually kind of a nice one. The whoosh is really subtle. We can always add whooshes later on when we do our sound designing. But yeah, I like this one. So punch with whoosh 17 is what I'm going to use for TT punching Dan in the face. And I might layer something else on top of that as well, but let's see how this sounds. All right, let's see what else we got. Check out some of these face punches. And what do we got in the regular punches here? That's actually kind of a nice one. Punch 12. It's pretty crunchy and deep. Punch 7's good too. I'll layer punch 7 on top. All right. And again, before it, we're going to probably be hearing some sort of like some sort of wind up sound, you know, like a, and then the punch occurs right after that. And that'll really, that later on when we add that, that'll really drive home the fact that it's kind of a lot of force coming in behind the punch. All right. So the next thing that needs to be sound designed right here is this move, where Dan grabs TT's pants. We want to definitely make sure that that stands out. And the easiest way to do that, obviously, is to show it visually, but then to accent it with a sound. So this is clearly a cloth grab. So that's what we're going to look for. That's a nice one, because he's definitely hitting it or grabbing his pants with a little bit of force. And this sounds like it's got a bit of force behind it. So let's try that one. It's a cloth grab 5. I'm going to drop it in. Right about there as Dan's hand contacts TT is where we kind of want our peak to be. Okay. Well, at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to finish adding a lot of these sound effects throughout the rest of this cut in a bit of a time lapse, because I think you can kind of see how this whole process works. Once you start getting even more familiar with your sound effect options in this bin, it's going to go even faster for you, and you're going to know which sounds really work well for you. One tip I do want to add, though, is that even though you may start to find your favorites, your favorite body hit, your favorite kick, your favorite punch, your favorite slap, it is important to keep variety in the fight, because in obviously a realistic situation, no two attack sounds are going to sound exactly the same. So while you may have a couple that seem to always work, you probably still want to purposely vary it a little bit every once in a while, even if it's not necessarily your top choice. All right, here we go. You can see as I'm going through this that the basic process that I'm following is to first find the primary sound effect for each event in the fight, whether it's a block or a grab or a punch. And then secondarily, I'll usually layer on anything that's impacting clothing, attack-wise or grab-wise or anything like that. I'll make sure that there's an appropriate clothing sound to go with it. And layering your sounds like this is what's really going to give you those interesting combinations that make your fight feel unique and give all of the events in the fight a realistic depth to them. All right, so let's take a look and see what we got.
You got our money now. Just leave us alone.
Get in the fucking warehouse, motherfucker. Now. Wait. Hey. Oh. Get up, you fucking piece of shit. Come here, you piece of shit.
All right, cool. So far, it's looking really good. So before moving on to the next lesson, you'll want to go through your cut and add all the key sound effects. You should be able to find every type of sound you might need in the exercise files we've imported. However, if for some reason you find a need for a sound that isn't there, feel free to add some from your own personal audio library. Also, as always, feel free to use the cheat sheet if you get stuck. In this cheat sheet, I've listed out all the exact file names of the sound effects I chose to use in my cut. And last, if you'd like to watch the entire process of me editing this particular section of the course unabridged, feel free to check out the full uncut screen capture that will show you the whole recording of adding the key sound effects. And you'll find this in the lesson resources folder for this particular lesson. In the next lesson, we'll further develop the sound of our fight scene by creating a rough music bed throughout the cut. Alright, I'll see you in a bit.